A reset with a new contract, coaching staff changes, a new attitude, a new outlook, wins coming through September and October. What was this going to be different in the end? And the emphatic statement delivered by Michigan against Ohio State and then Iowa. Yes, this is different in 2021. We got Clayton Sayfie on the line from the Wolverine here at the Voice of College Football to talk Michigan. Clayton, how you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah, been great. A lot of fun here over the last couple of days. Got back from Indy. Not much sleep this time of year. Not as much as normal, I guess. But, you wouldn't have it any other way, I guess.
I guess the Wolverines answered the question whether there would be a letdown after Ohio State.
Yeah, definitely. Little clunky in the first half. Credit Iowa. That's a really good defense, and they got home with a couple blitzes and frustrated Michigan. Also had the, field position battle there in the second quarter where Michigan, started 3 of its 4 drives inside the 10-yard line. But once they got in a little bit of a rhythm in the second half, you saw that offense kind of open up. You saw, a little more push against the, really stout Iowa defense on the interior. Michigan hit on a few big passes, and the rest was kind of history. 28-0 in the second half, really exactly how you drew it up. And then that last touchdown, maybe for some style points, as you saw on the TV copy that Jim Harbaugh mouthed, he said it, but you could read what he was saying, that we have a chance to be the number 1 seed. Then they bring out the flea flicker there in the fourth quarter. A lot of respect between Jim Harbaugh, Kirk Ferentz, Michigan, and Iowa, but that one was just kind of for an obvious reason. You're trying to get that 1 seed. Didn't get it, number 2 seed, but really a great performance by Michigan. This is a team that has been in some tight games throughout the year, but then the last 2, they dominate Ohio State. And then they, go in and do that to Iowa, the largest margin of victory against Iowa for any team that's beaten Iowa since 1999, which was Kirk Ferentz's first year as a head coach, just to show you how impressive that was, especially against a good Iowa team. So, just a clean performance, exactly what that team needed, coming off of an emotional win against Ohio State. Were able to celebrate on that podium. And it's funny, Aidan Hutchinson said the next day when we got to talk to him that, he was happy and everything and they celebrated, but all the emotions kind of were, he used up all of his emotions the week prior against Ohio State with that great celebration. So it's been a kind of a whirlwind couple weeks for those guys. They get the week off here and then it's back to work for Georgia.
Beat Ohio State for the first time since 2011, win the Big Ten championship for the first time since 2004, historic season for Michigan. First time in the college football playoff. Clayton Sayfie on the line, the Wolverine.com. Join him and the rest of the staff there covering Michigan football. And this is the time to do it. So get on over there, take the Michigan dive for the next month through the college football playoff and the appearance against Georgia. Clayton, you mentioned the number 1 seed, and I heard a couple players comment. They gave a pretty respectful but honest answer at the same time, basically stating, we believe we deserved the number 1 seed. We wish we would have gotten it. However, time to move on. We didn't, and we're in, and that's what counts.
Right. I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think it was a shock that they got the number 2. I think that was probably like an, 80, 85% chance, maybe 10% they get the 1, and then like a 5% that they would actually drop maybe behind Georgia, who would just slide 1 to 3. But no, Georgia at 3, Michigan at 2 kind of made sense. Although you look at it with Alabama, they've played some more close games against unranked opponents than Michigan, and they also struggled and barely beat Auburn, had to go to a few overtimes against them the week prior. So, not necessarily, clear cut with Alabama there, but I don't think anybody's, too worked up about that. You would have much rather gotten Cincinnati, I think, in the semifinal, and that's really why it was usually the seeding doesn't really matter that much in the top 4. But getting a Cincinnati team, which is a really good team, would have been a little easier than playing Georgia, who's been at the top for basically the entire year. But that's how it shook out. None of the players, they're just happy to be there. You mentioned all those facts about, just they haven't been here, first Big Ten title in 17 seasons. So I think they're just happy to be in this spot, and there's nobody really too torn up about it. And as Jim Harbaugh said, as a couple of the other guys said that we talked to in the last couple of days, you got to win 2 to win the national championship anyway. It doesn't matter how the matchup, exactly works out. So you got to do that. and they got a shot. So that's really all that matters at this point.
Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media, because if you enjoy them, then others will as well that don't know that we're here talking college football each and every day. Throw out 2-4 from 2020. It counts, but in regards to what it meant for 2021, that's clearly been determined. It didn't mean much. It was an aberration. Everything before that was in the 9-3 to 10-2 range. The talent, if you look at recruiting rankings, similar. The roster similar. I expected Michigan to get back on track with what they had done in the past under Harbaugh, not to necessarily elevate to this status, possibly a national championship. So with like talent and the head coach the same, difficult schedule, what do you attribute the different results in getting over the hump?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one thing. And I've kind of discussed this a little bit in the last couple of days, and really, since they kind of turned this thing around and you saw that they were a top 10 team, even before the Ohio State game, this is a much improved team, program back on track. As Jim Harbaugh said, the train was going in one direction. They lifted it up, turned it around, and now it's going in the other direction after a disastrous 2020 season, now going into 2021. I think it started with some of the staff changes that Jim Harbaugh made, replacing 6 assistants, bringing back guys like Mike Hart and Ron Bellamy, who played at Michigan, understand the rivalry games that Michigan plays in, understand what the culture is supposed to look like. And then the culture, that all ties in, but it couldn't have happened without the leadership on this team. I mean, talking about it with some people in the last couple of days, some of the all-time Michigan leaders on this team, Aidan Hutchinson, who's a Heisman Trophy finalist, and one of the best players and projected top pick in the NFL draft as it stands right now. Him coming back, deciding to return for this team, and understanding what it's like through his dad, who played here and was an All-American. What needs to be done to get over the hump, to win a championship. Cade McNamara is just been an outstanding leader for this team. Andrew Vistardis, the center, Josh Ross at linebacker. Those are the captains that have really turned this thing around. It's a mixture of just about everything. This team, you see them, we talked about it after the Wisconsin game, them jumping around on the sideline, despite, Wisconsin having some momentum there at the beginning of the second half. And then, Nebraska, they were jumping around to whatever song they played. And, it just felt like the vibe and energy was different. Guys talked about it. A lot of people said, we'll see it when we believe it. So did I. And then you saw it. And then you saw it week after week and week after week. And then you saw it against Ohio State, which is what matters the most, right? And then you saw it against Iowa. So, man, I would say culture is number one thing. The people in the building, including the new coaching staff, is another. And then, you mentioned, some of the talent, feels similar to some of those other years. And I think, frankly, there were a couple of years that had more talent than this one on this Michigan team. But guys have stepped up, guys that we weren't talking about last season, that have emerged this year. Cade McNamara is obviously one of them at the quarterback spot. Blake Corum, becoming one of the better players in the Big Ten when he's healthy. Hassan Haskins raising his game from being the leading rusher last year to now, he's in the top 20 in all-time, rushing yards in a season for Michigan. He's the all-time leader for Michigan in rushing touchdowns. Guys like that were already solidified, taking the next step, and guys that we weren't talking about breaking out and having big seasons. So combination of all those things. And then, in addition to the culture with the new coaches, Mike McDonald, and that defense, what he was able to do to turn this into an elite unit now. I mean, we're talking about one of the best defenses in the country with basically the same personnel that they had a year ago, and even losing Kwity Paye, a first-round draft pick. You're talking about a huge step from being ranked 100th in the country to top 10. So can't say enough about him. What they did on offense with Josh Gaddis, the coordinator. You could go on and rave about this team, Mark, because it's just been so impressive what they've done. And I don't think you can pinpoint one thing for the differences. It's just been a crazy combination of things that no one predicted was going to all come together at once when we were talking about this team back in January.
So, Clayton, you've given me a number of good things to go off of here. So on the defensive side, Aidan Hutchinson, for a defensive player to be recognized at that level, to get the invite to New York City, there are great defensive players all over the place. And again, to get recognized at that level happens very rarely. So a player just has to jump off the screen, just has to be exceptionally dominant to override the offensive bias that is the Heisman Trophy and to get recognized. So just try to put into words what his dominance level has been.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great all season. When you look at the way teams have to, keep a running back in and try to chip him, or even keep a tight end in and have two guys on him, or if they try to go one-on-one, like Ohio State did or Penn State did, then they kind of get burned. He's been great in the run game, even better, rushing the passer throughout the season. But then you get to that Ohio State game, and I think to be a Heisman finalist, you probably needed some of those Heisman moments. For an offensive player, it could be one Heisman moment or one drive for a quarterback at the end of a game to win it or something like that. But I think Aidan needed a monster game through and through on the defensive side, like you said, to kind of break through that bias for that side of the ball. 3 sacks against C.J. Stroud and Ohio State, one of them being on a third down in the red zone. Another one being in the second half on a crucial drive to kind of back them up. I mean, outstanding performance against Ohio State. 15 pressures to go along with those 3 sacks. That's the most in college football history since they've been tracking the stats since 2014 on PFF, obviously with the advanced analytics getting a little bit better. So, that game, I think, really solidified him, put him in this spot. And then following it up with another really good game against Iowa, you see another one of those clips of him knocking a tackle just flat on his back, which was impressive. Again, that's kind of making the rounds on social media. Had a handful of tackles, but, had another, I think it was 9 pressures in that game as well. And Iowa was actually helping out a little bit on the outside with some running backs and stuff. But, not much works against this guy. So he's been fantastic. And we already talked about kind of the leadership aspect with him as well, that I don't think they necessarily factor in with the Heisman Trophy. But when you talk about this team, and how much importance he has, for the success that this team has had so far, it's hard to describe. You asked me to describe it. That's the best I could do. But man, I really don't think you can fully put into words what he's meant for Michigan. And I think well deserving making the Heisman Trophy finalist list. I don't think he's going to win it. That'll be Bryce Young, from Alabama. But the fact that he's there, I think, for a defensive player means a lot. 3rd guy in Michigan history on the defensive side of the ball to make it, joining Charles Woodson and Jabril Peppers. Only 11 finalists on the defensive side of the ball. So it's a huge honor and a testament to kind of what he's done this season.
So Hutchinson's dominance has directly benefited David Ojabo on the other side.
Yes.
He's had an outstanding season as well. People that follow just a little bit of Michigan football know about Daxton Hill. He's the star on the back end, but you don't play top 10 defense. You don't harass C.J. Stroud and do what you did against Ohio State. You don't hold Iowa, even though they've got offensive limitations, to a field goal. You don't do all the things that Michigan's done without a complete defensive effort, because any offensive coordinator is going to find the weak spots if they're there and avoid the superstars. So kind of highlight for people that are going to watch Michigan football for the first time against Georgia, some of the other guys that have contributed and been key factors.
You mentioned David Ojabo. He's directly, gotten the benefit of having Aidan Hutchinson on the other side. I mean, if you try to double team both guys on the edge, you're not going to really have many guys running routes and things like that. So he's done a great job, and he's done a great job in his own right too. I mean, not to take away from how good he's been. I think he's got 5 forced fumbles, which is a program record in a single season, and he set that weeks ago. So he's been fantastic, very disruptive in the backfield. More of a straight up pass rusher than a run stopper, but he's certainly one to watch. DJ Turner at the cornerback spot is a guy who didn't start until I think the 7th or 8th game of the season, the Northwestern game. And he started because Jamon Green was a little banged up. And man, he's taken that and become Michigan's best cover guy on this team. Iowa threw at him 8 times. He allowed 2 receptions for 4 yards, a couple short ones, and then makes the tackle. So he's been fantastic on the back end, along with Daxton Hill. It was probably a safety at the next level, playing nickel, though, in this defense to kind of get him a little bit more on the edge and make some of those tackles that he's so good at. Josh Ross on the inside is a middle linebacker, has been a little susceptible out in coverage, but such a good run stuffer, also communicator on that defense, and has really led them. And then a guy I like talking about, who's I think the most improved player on this Michigan team, is nose tackle Mazi Smith, who's an absolute beast on the inside. You look at his numbers, you would think he's not impacting much, but he's just done such a good job in this 3-4 defense that Mike Macdonald has. When the edges are so far out, he's got to eat up a couple blocks on the inside on just about every play, and he has done that. Doesn't always get the credit, but I like throwing him credit. But I mean, there's a lot of guys on this defense that have stepped up, and like I said, it's largely the same personnel. Junior Colson's in there, a new guy, freshman at the linebacker spot next to Josh Ross, but it's basically the same personnel. Mike Macdonald has played to their strengths, also developed them individually, and now you're talking about one of the better defenses. And I think Georgia, this could be a low-scoring game that Georgia has a tough time, scoring the ball.
Folks, Clayton Safey's here to talk Michigan football. Catch him and the rest of the crew there at thewolverine.com. Of course, Michigan, Georgia, 2-3 matchup in the college football playoffs. Clayton, when you ran through the offense, you mentioned identity, and this is what seems to be so impressive about what's happened on offense is they've been able to establish an identity. The identity is what Jim Harbaugh wants it to be. It's toughness, it's run first, it's offensive line dominance, but they didn't get stuck there, which was the fear of a lot of Michigan fans. They didn't get stuck there early in the season. Oh, we can only run. We're not going to have explosive plays. We're not going to be able to throw it when we need to. They've been able to have a balanced offense in their own way and maintain an identity of toughness, run first, offensive line.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's where it starts with this Michigan team. And Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator, has done a really good job, but there's noticeable differences between what they're running or what they ran the last 2 years under his tutelage and what they're doing now. A lot more of the Jim Harbaugh offense, basically what he ran at Stanford and San Francisco, but, out of a pistol and, the shotgun and, some spread stuff, but you're seeing two tight ends quite a bit as well, and they want to just run the ball right at you, pulling guards, pulling tackles, pulling your center at times, pulling tight ends around, getting lead blockers out there and making you basically be more physical, get off blocks, kind of taking it back to the throwback type of football. As Jim Harbaugh said, channeling Bo Schembechler and how, he would just talk about blocking and tackling. That's what it's going to come down to. And then that's what it came down to against Ohio State when they kind of ran it right at him. 5 touchdowns on the ground, almost 300 yards. So it's worked. But then, you mentioned, just how much balance this offense has as well. Early on in the season, I was on with you and we were saying, man, before that Wisconsin game, they're probably not going to be able to run much on Wisconsin, so they're going to have to beat them through the air. They were able to do that. That was the first test. And then it's just gotten better and better throughout the season. Credit to Cade McNamara for improving throughout the year, but just kind of staying steady. He'll make a mistake, but he always comes back and, is able to, make plays down the stretch, as we saw against Penn State. Not a ton of weapons on this team, but they're kind of using them in the right spots. They're using certain guys on, stuff to the edge. They're using the tight ends over the middle. They're using Roman Wilson on some deep balls and things like that. They're kind of really clicking right now, and I think they've kind of figured out what they want to be offensively, and there's still a lot of balance in there, but you're right. It starts with that run game. Then you take everything else from there and, basically take what the defense gives you. You see the safety start to creep in. Cade McNamara then can hit him over the top or make a play through the air. So, been impressive, I think, what Josh Gaddis and what Jim Harbaugh have done with this offense this season. After, again, last year, you look at statistically, there wasn't much to build on, and they kind of overhauled some things and made some big changes, and it's paid off.
We've got 3 weeks to talk the Georgia matchups, so we'll let you dive into the Bulldogs. I've seen them play probably 5 times this year, as I typically try to catch everybody. I think the two teams are pretty similar. They can look at each other and pretty much see strength on strength across the board. So what's your initial thought?
Yeah, I think they're similar in style. Georgia's a good running team, but I think Stetson Bennett also is a pretty good quarterback. They got a good tight end. I think Bowers is his name. So They have some identity on offense, very similar to Michigan in that sense. And then defensively, I think they're kind of Michigan, but, better, with that D line, which is just ridiculous. You look at those guys and, it's hard to believe they're not NFL linemen already. A lot of them will be very, very soon. I've caught them a couple times, bits and pieces, of their games. And they've just been so impressive that you almost want to flick away and watch another game because they're going to dominate. But now here we are with Michigan having to play them. So, we'll delve into them in the weeks to come. But I think it's going to be a tough challenge. Touchdown underdog feels about right to me for Michigan. But that was what they were against Ohio State. So I don't think there's any guy in that building that doesn't believe they can come in and win this game. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a great effort. And that's what Cade McNamara and some of the guys said the other day. But they got a shot. That's really all they've ever asked for and all they've wanted this season. They've taken advantage of most of those opportunities they've had. This will be a great one. Colors, I think, will look good out there down in Miami. So excited for, Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, a little history between the two back in the satellite camp days. But should be a good one. And I think it's going to be low scoring, as I mentioned earlier, with both defenses playing pretty well. So it's going to be a good one. And then Alabama, Cincinnati, the precursor to that, it'll be a pretty good New Year's Eve.
Clayton Sayfie, the Wolverine. Catch him and the rest of the crew there covering Michigan football. Clayton, appreciate you stopping by as always. We will catch up with you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.